was a member of 6 World Series championship teams with the Yankees, second baseman for the Yankees, 558 hits, MVP of the 1950 World Series, and during World War II, flew for the Marine Corps, 57 combat missions in the Pacific, flying the Douglas SBD Dauntless, earning a Distinguished Flying Cross, 13 Air Medals, 3 Navy citations, flew 63 more missions in Korea, and entered the service with the Navy back in 42, and actually left baseball twice in 42, then again in 1953, and had no hesitation, none whatsoever. When his country called, he answered, and I bet you today, if you ask Jerry Coleman, he still has no regrets of what happened with him back in the 1940s and 1950s.
Absolutely right, John. I'll tell you, there was a rather interesting thing in World War II, December the 7th, 1941. The Japanese hit Pearl Harbor, and every young man, nutty like me, couldn't wait to get in the service. I was in high school at the time as a senior, and we're all thinking, what branch of the service are we going into? Well, one day they called all the senior boys into the auditorium, and we sat there wondering what was going on. And suddenly from behind came in 2 naval aviators with wings this big. And that's immediately what I wanted to be. They had a program called V5. That's where you signed to become a naval cadet and suddenly worked your way to become an officer if you could. So I went down to the ferry building after I played a half a year. I was only 17 at the time. I had to wait to be 18. I went out and played baseball that year just to kill the summer, to be honest with you. Joined the V5 in October 1942. Finally was commissioned after bases all over the country, and in April the 1st, 1944. Now, you know, that's April Fool's Day. I thought they were kidding me. They gave me my wings, and off I went. And I went to Cherry Point, North Carolina, where there were about 500 other pilots trying to get out of there. And they had a program they called Going Out to the Boondocks and Learning How to Be a Marine Ground Officer. And about 2 weeks into that, they called us together, and they said, I want the following officers to step forward. Gerald F. Coleman, 036103. I thought they were going to shoot us. About 5 of us stepped out and said, you're going to Miramar, California. Hot gumdrop. Went to Miramar, picked up the SBD here in California, and a month later I was on my way in a troop ship to the South Pacific. The one thing I love about that troop ship was everybody was in charge of a deck. I was deck D, 4 on, 4 off, and everybody in deck D got sick. Now, that was the worst, atrocious trip I ever took in my life. Got to Guadalcanal, put me into a squadron called VMSP 341. It was a tour of turtles. How'd you like to go to war as a turtle? You know, I mean, not devil ray or the tigers or bear, but turtles. Anyway, stayed with them. And finally, in July of 1945, after I'd finished whatever number of missions I was doing, they said, you guys are all going home. You're all carrier qualified, which we were. Got on a plane, and in those days, it took 2 days to fly back from the Philippines to Guadalcanal. Not Guadalcanal, but I'll think of the islands later. My brain goes to that. We got back 2 days later. And finally, I was home on leave. They said, send us home for a week. And on August the 11th, the war ended. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Can you imagine, had we tried to invade Japan in 1945, wouldn't that have been exciting? So anyway, then I went back to baseball, finally got on the Yankees in 1949 to stay. I was up there briefly in 48. They had turkeys like DiMaggio and Keller and Henrik and Bear and those guys playing. And if you ever go for the ball club, get your mindset to be there with good players. That's what makes it work. So finally, I did make the Yankees, but then in 1951, we just completed beating the Giants, Monty, as I recall, and he was out at home plate, you know. They said he's safe. He was out. They tried to steal home. And the other guy down there, Feller, I never liked him. He just threw curveballs behind you. I don't know where they came from. Anyway, you talk about his fastball. His curveball was monstrous. And he always... that's why he hit only 201 or whatever it was. Anyway, let's see, October 1951, I got a call from the Marine Detachment over in Alameda, and the major wanted to talk to me, wanted to take me to lunch. I said, oh, boy, hot gumdrop, here I go. So I was home on leave at the time, in between seasons. He looked at me and he said, what do you think about going back in the service? Well, I hadn't given it much thought, to be honest with you. So he said, we're going to get you. I said, how long? He said, a year and a half. I said, do me a favor, please. Sure. Take me right now in October of 1951. Let me out in March of 1953. Lose 1 year. They don't work that way. You know how they work it. They called me in the beginning of 52 and let me out at the end of 53. So I missed 2 more years. But I will say this. I know that Bob Fella feels the way. The highlight of my life was my time in the service. And I must tell you, to this day, I've been in baseball for since 1942, and that's been great for me. I've been a broadcaster for over 45 years, and the reason I became a broadcaster is I didn't want to get a job. Just you know what I mean, John. He understands. You talk your way through life. So basically, that's pretty much my story. But the one thing I must tell you, you have to do, surround yourself with good players. They don't notice how bad you really are. And I had Mantle and DiMaggio and Berra and all these guys that Feller probably hated. But, you know, you weren't very nice to me, Bob, now I think about it. Curve. Anyway, I was very fortunate. My timing was beautiful with the Yankees. I played under Bucky Harris 1 year, then Casey Stengel for 10. Excuse me. And Stengel, they thought he was nuts. He's not nuts. He won 10 pennants in 12 years, and that's not bad. And, of course, one thing I did say to Rizzuto, who was my double play combination for about 8 or 9 years and recently passed away, and broadcast with him in New York for about 8 or 9 years as well. All we read in the paper was DiMaggio this and Mantle this. And I said, you know, Phil, you and I are carrying the ball club, and nobody knows it but us. Thank you.